Let's do a college football preview for Oregon hosting James Madison in the first round of the playoffs. This game, to me, there's not a lot to write home about. James Madison, of course, the Sun Belt champions, 12-1. They've handled their business throughout the season. Their only loss comes versus Louisville in a 28-14 game. But I do think that this team has a very strong identity, and it's in the run game. Look at these running statistics. Points per game, they're 9th in the country. Running the football, they're number 10 in the country in rush play percentage, meaning they pound the rock. Rush attempts per game, 8th in the country, 6th in the country in rush yards per game. Meanwhile, their defense is unbelievably stout against the run, right? You see here, 3rd in the country opponent rush yards per attempt. Second in the country in rush yards allowed per game versus whoever they're playing. Meanwhile, Oregon kind of establishes the same mentality here, right? 6th in the country in yards per rush, 12th in the country in yards per game, and this is versus a Big Ten schedule. You don't see James Madison playing, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana. You know what I'm saying? This obviously is a pretty lopsided matchup here. Oregon has the 11th scoring offense in the country, 8th scoring defense. James Madison has more of the same. I mean, statistically speaking, right, you would think that this matchup is relatively even, but I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not. Now, I'll give you the keys to success for James Madison to start. Number one, Wayne Knight is going to have one hell of a day to win versus Oregon. It's gonna be freezing cold up there in Eugene. It is a perfect timing here. Talking Shedeur Sanders here for James Madison to try to establish the run. Looking at Wayne Knight and his game log, I think he's done a relatively good job against some of these opponents that he's played. I don't believe, played the second half of that game versus Louisville, but look how he's transgressed throughout the rest of this season. Massive wins when it comes to his home games, 21 for 212, 15 for 126, 16 for 94, and he's scoring touchdowns in almost all of these games. On the road, he tends not to struggle. Struggle is a strong term, but not do nearly as well, right? We see at Texas State, 3.7 yards per carry. At Marshall, that was a fairly good day. At Georgia State was a fairly good day. But look at these games right here. At Louisville, couldn't get anything going. Liberty didn't do the best, but also I think is a pretty solid game to say the least. At Coastal Carolina, once again, didn't punch it in the end zone, but he has been a very consistent back throughout the season. 1,200 rush yards, 9 touchdowns, top 10 in the country in rushing yards, top 15 in the country in yards per carry. So the key to success offensively for James Madison is establish the run game. It helps you control the pace. And as you see here, time of possession-wise, James Madison ranks 3rd in the country in time of possession. The reason that they win and dominate a lot of the games that they play is quite simply because they control the tempo. They have the ball 57% of the time. Meanwhile, look at Oregon. They're more of the same, 36th in the country in time of possession. Both of these teams want to control the tempo. Now, defensively, what James Madison is going to have to do is they are going to have to figure out how to pull some magic out of the hat and create more turnovers. They're 97th in the country in creating turnovers, only 1 takeaway per game. That's extremely weak when it comes to other college football playoff teams. Oklahoma is far better at that. So I do think that, obviously you can defend the run well. That's kind of an obvious one. I think the one that's going to happen here is they're going to have to create some freak turnovers if they want to keep this game relatively close. So my 2 keys to success for James Madison is control the line of scrimmage offensively and create some turnovers magically, whether that's a blocked punt, a deflected pass that gets intercepted, or a late punch out on kind of a long sustaining run that ends up with James Madison being able to flip the field. So Oregon, let's talk about them. Number one, their key to success is just play safe with the football, right? Giveaways per game, they're only averaging 0.8. They're 11th in the country, fewest giveaways in the country. That's pretty impressive. Their completion percentage is very high. They run the ball at a pretty high rate. Dante Moore is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He seems to always make the right decision with the football. The only game that he really struggled in so far this season was Indiana. Now, he didn't have great spots versus Iowa, but that was on the road in a rainy slop fest. I think Oregon is a strong team. They're pretty young and green. This is a spot where they could make a lot of mistakes, but I just don't think that will be the case. If I had to describe how this game is going to go, I think Oregon is going to come out. They're going to look a little rusty. They haven't played a game in the last, I believe, 1, 2, 3 weeks by the time this game takes place. James Madison played in that conference championship. They could make some plays early. I suspect the first quarter score is going to be around 3 or 6-0 with Oregon kicking a couple field goals. Maybe James Madison gets on the board with a field goal of their own. But by the second quarter, Oregon will start to rain down on James Madison physically. They just have so many unbelievable athletes on both sides of the football that are unbelievably hard to contain for teams of their similar caliber. Just ask Indiana. Now, everybody's going to say, oh, well, Indiana won by 10 points. Well, that's the number one team in the country, and they're undefeated. James Madison is not that. I'm here to tell you now. So by the end of the second quarter, I imagine the score will either be 13-3 or 17-3. Oregon is up by 14 points, maybe 10 points. I digress. Oregon probably gets the ball to start in the second half, and it's more of the same, right? It's this grueling slop fest in the cold. Oregon's just running the ball over and over and over again. They're not creating explosive plays, but they're also not, like I said, they don't make the dumb decisions. They're probably not going to give the ball up more than one time. Would be absolutely insane. But James Madison, they're going to have to figure out a way to stop the run. And in my opinion, the only way to do that is by creating a turnover. That's going to be the game line for me. This Oregon team, in my opinion, is way better than people think that they are. Look at some of these games that they've had. Minnesota, they dominated. USC, second half was dominant. Washington on the road. Ohio State struggled more than Oregon did on the road versus Washington. Not Washington State, excuse me. That game versus Penn State, I know it was overtime and Penn State turned out to be in shambles, but in my opinion, that game versus Penn State was a lot closer than it was because Penn State is actually way better than their records suggest. Indiana, quite simply, just was situationally better. I don't think that James Madison, looking at their fourth down conversion rate is 42.86%. They're 112th in the country. They've kind of let it go on fourth down here. They're 41st in the country in fourth down conversion percentage. Third down, James Madison is pretty good, but Oregon defensively, situationally, I guess that's one of their weak spots here. They're 117th in fourth down conversion percentage, and situationally, I guess the third key to success here for James Madison is to somehow force situational fourth downs that Oregon has to go for it. If that happens, that'll be unbelievably impressive. James Madison is going to 100% need some better red zone scoring. Oregon's red zone defense is actually not great. So if James Madison can just get to the red zone, put up some points, and create some situational turnovers, either interceptions or fumbles or turnover on downs, then they can absolutely be in this game. But right now, my final score prediction is Oregon 27, James Madison 6. Let me know what you guys think of that game in the comments. In my opinion, this should not even be a college football playoff game that should be discussed, but that's just my opinion. I'm a little salty that Notre Dame and or BYU, Texas, or Vanderbilt didn't make it into the college football playoff. So 27-6 is my final score prediction. I do believe that Oregon will control both sides of the line of scrimmage. I'm not convinced that they're going to blow James Madison out of the water, but I'm fairly confident, especially considering all of the continuity and consistency that Oregon has. Think about, for example, Texas A&M, right? They just lost to Texas. Oregon has won the last 7 or maybe 6 of their games. Yeah, they've won the last 6. Dan Lanning's not going anywhere. This offensive and defensive staff is not going anywhere right now. Ole Miss has a lot of noise. Ohio State has a lot of noise, even with Brian Hartline leaving. So I like Oregon's continuity and consistency. James Madison has a lot of noise, right, with Chesney going to UCLA. So there's too much against James Madison in this game for it to be relatively close. I've got Oregon winning this game 27-6. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.